What if I told you that one company quietly sold over 500 million gaming consoles and changed American living rooms forever? Think about it. Millions of households across the United States have had at least one PlayStation sitting under the TV. For many people, PlayStation isn't just a gaming device. It's the place where they played their first online match, stayed up all night with friends, or experienced legendary games like God of War, The Last of Us, and Spider-Man. But here's the crazy part. The PlayStation brand almost didn't exist. It started as a failed partnership inside Nintendo. Then it turned into one of the most dominant consumer tech products in history. And today, the battle between PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, shaping not just gaming, but entertainment, technology, and even jobs across the United States. So, in this video, we're going to break down the entire PlayStation console sales history, from the original PlayStation in the 90s to the PlayStation 5 today. Which console sold the most? Which one almost failed? And why did one PlayStation generation completely dominate the United States market? Because once you see the numbers, the story behind them is even more fascinating. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how PlayStation became one of the most powerful brands in gaming history. Let's rewind, back to the early 1990s. At the time, the gaming world looked very different in America. Nintendo was king, Sega was the challenger, and Sony was just the company that made TVs, stereos, and Walkmans. Nobody expected Sony to enter gaming. But after a messy fallout with Nintendo over a CD-based console project, Sony decided to do something bold. They built their own console, and in 1995, the original PlayStation launched in the United States. This console changed everything. At the time, most American gamers were used to cartridge-based systems like the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Sony took a risk by switching to CD technology, which allowed bigger games, better audio, and full-motion video. Suddenly, developers had more freedom, and Sony marketed the PlayStation aggressively to a slightly older audience. Instead of treating gaming as a kids-only hobby, they leaned into a more mature image. Games like Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid, and Final Fantasy VII helped push the PlayStation into mainstream culture. By the time the dust settled, the original PlayStation had sold over 100 million units worldwide. In the United States, it became a massive success and helped redefine gaming as a mainstream entertainment industry. But Sony wasn't done, because what came next would become one of the best-selling tech products in history. In the year 2000, Sony released the PlayStation 2. And this console wasn't just another gaming machine, it was a strategy. At the time, DVDs were exploding in popularity across American households. People were buying expensive DVD players to watch movies at home. Sony realized something brilliant. The PlayStation 2 could double as a DVD player, so suddenly, millions of American families had a choice: spend hundreds of dollars on a DVD player, or buy a PlayStation 2 and get both. That decision helped push the PS2 into an entirely different level of success. Developers flooded the platform with games. Franchises like Grand Theft Auto, Gran Turismo, Final Fantasy, and Metal Gear Solid thrived on the system. And the numbers were staggering. The PlayStation 2 sold over 155 million units worldwide. To this day, it remains the best-selling video game console ever made. But here's where it gets interesting. While Sony dominated the early 2000s, the competition started heating up in the United States. Microsoft entered the console market with the Xbox in 2001, and that changed the game. Xbox introduced powerful hardware and something revolutionary for American gamers: Xbox Live. Online gaming suddenly became a major battlefield. Sony still led in sales with the PS2, but Microsoft had started a war that would define the next 2 decades. Then came the PlayStation 3, and this is where things got complicated. When the PlayStation 3 launched in 2006, Sony made a bold decision. They packed the console with cutting-edge technology, including a Blu-ray drive and a complex processor called the Cell architecture. The problem? The price. In the United States, the PS3 launched at $599. That's nearly $900 in today's money when adjusted for inflation. American gamers were shocked. Meanwhile, Microsoft's Xbox 360 was cheaper and already had a strong online community. Early PS3 sales struggled. For the first time, Sony wasn't dominating the market, and this is the part nobody talks about enough. The PlayStation brand was actually in danger. Developers found the PS3 hardware difficult to work with. Games sometimes ran better on Xbox 360, and Microsoft gained serious momentum in the United States. But Sony didn't give up. Over time, they lowered the price, improved developer tools, and built an incredible lineup of exclusive games. Titles like Uncharted, The Last of Us, and God of War 3 slowly rebuilt the brand's reputation. By the end of its life cycle, the PS3 sold around 87 million units worldwide. Still impressive, but far below the dominance of the PS2. Sony had learned a hard lesson, and that lesson shaped the next console. In 2013, Sony launched the PlayStation 4, and this time, they did everything differently. The PS4 was designed to be developer-friendly, powerful, and reasonably priced. It launched in the United States at $399, undercutting the Xbox One by $100. That decision alone gave Sony a massive early advantage. But there was something else. Sony focused heavily on exclusive games, and this changed everything. Studios like Naughty Dog, Santa Monica Studio, and Insomniac delivered blockbuster experiences that American gamers couldn't play anywhere else. Games like Spider-Man, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and The Last of Us Part 2 became cultural moments. Suddenly, PlayStation wasn't just a console. It was the home of premium storytelling and gaming. Sales exploded. The PS4 eventually sold over 117 million units worldwide, making it one of the most successful consoles ever created. And in the United States, it dominated the generation. But now we arrive at the current chapter, the PlayStation 5. When Sony launched the PS5 in 2020, the demand was unbelievable. It launched during a global pandemic when millions of Americans were spending more time at home. Gaming demand skyrocketed. But the PS5 had a major problem: supply. For nearly 2 years, the console was incredibly difficult to find due to global chip shortages and supply chain issues. Many American gamers remember the chaos: online restocks selling out in seconds, retail lotteries, resellers charging double the price. Despite all that, the PS5 still managed to become one of the fastest-selling consoles in history. As supply improved, sales continued climbing rapidly. And the PS5 represents Sony's current strategy: powerful hardware, cinematic games, and a growing digital ecosystem. But here's where it gets serious. Console sales aren't just about gaming anymore. They affect jobs, tech development, streaming, and even the entertainment industry in the United States. The gaming industry now generates more revenue than movies and music combined, and PlayStation is one of the biggest forces behind that. Major American game studios employ thousands of developers. Streaming platforms like Twitch and YouTube Gaming thrive because millions of people are playing PlayStation games. Even Hollywood is getting involved. Several PlayStation franchises are being adapted into TV shows and movies. The Last of Us became a major television hit. God of War and Horizon are getting adaptations. Gaming consoles are no longer just hardware, they're entertainment ecosystems. But like any technology platform, PlayStation's dominance comes with debates. On one side, supporters argue that Sony's focus on exclusive games has pushed the entire industry forward. High-quality storytelling, massive open worlds, and cinematic experiences have become the new standard. For many gamers in the United States, PlayStation represents premium gaming. But critics raise concerns too. Some argue that exclusivity limits player choice. Others worry about rising game prices and the shift toward digital ownership instead of physical discs. And there's also the growing conversation around subscription services. Microsoft has pushed aggressively into Game Pass, offering hundreds of games for a monthly fee. Sony has its own service now, but the competition is fierce. This battle between platforms could shape the future of gaming. And that brings us to the bigger question: where is PlayStation going next? By 2030, the gaming industry could look very different. Cloud gaming may allow players to stream games without powerful hardware. Artificial intelligence could change how games are built. Virtual reality might become more mainstream. Sony is already investing heavily in VR with the PlayStation VR 2, exploring new ways to experience games. At the same time, Sony is expanding beyond consoles. More PlayStation games are coming to PC. Mobile gaming is becoming a bigger focus, and Sony is building PlayStation into a broader entertainment brand. But one thing remains clear: consoles still matter. For millions of Americans, the PlayStation is more than just a device. It's a social hub, an entertainment center, and a gateway into massive virtual worlds. And if history tells us anything, it's that the next PlayStation generation will likely bring another wave of innovation. So, what does all of this mean for you? If you're a student interested in technology, gaming is now one of the fastest growing industries in the world. Careers in game design, programming, art, and storytelling are expanding every year. If you're a working professional, the gaming ecosystem is creating opportunities in marketing, streaming, esports, and content creation. And if you're simply a consumer, understanding the console landscape helps you make smarter choices about where to invest your time and money. Because consoles aren't just gadgets anymore, they're platforms shaping the future of entertainment. From the original PlayStation selling 100 million units, to the PS2 becoming the best-selling console ever, to the PS5 continuing the legacy today, PlayStation's history is more than just numbers. It's the story of how gaming became one of the most powerful industries in the world. And the next chapter is still being written. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Will PlayStation continue to dominate the console market, or will the future of gaming move beyond consoles entirely? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into gaming history, make sure you subscribe to TechVibes for more stories about the technology shaping our world, because the future of tech is happening right now, and here on TechVibes, we break it down.